This is our first session, Managing Recreational Safety on New Hampshire Lakes. Thank you for those of you who have introduced yourselves in the chat box. For those of you who have been with us this summer, this is our third webinar series. And so I see a lot of familiar names out there. So thank you again for tuning in. So just a few housekeeping things. This session is being recorded. So you, as participants, you will be muted for the duration of the webinar. There's so many of you here. We're expecting up to 60 folks that have registered. It would be difficult for us all to chat. If you leave your camera on, just remember that others can see you. Please submit your questions in the chat box at the bottom of the screen, and I know that many of you have already found that. At the end of the presentation, we will answer your questions, turn them over to Captain Dunleavy. At around 8:15 this evening, you should receive an email from me asking you to evaluate our session. Let us know what you liked and what you would like to learn about in future webinars. So your host this evening, again, I'm Andrea Lamoureux, the Vice President of Programs and Operations with New Hampshire Lakes. You may have heard Crystal Costa, Conservation Program Coordinator. She'll be helping to answer your questions. And Jessica Sayers, our Conservation Program Assistant, will also be helping to answer your questions. And if at any time you experience some technical difficulties, type that into the chat box and hopefully Crystal or Jessica can help you, because I probably won't be much help. So for those of you who are new to us, New Hampshire Lakes, we're the only member-supported nonprofit organization working for all of New Hampshire's lakes to help keep them clean and healthy. And we rely on members and people to donate to us to keep this great work going. So if you're a member, thank you. And if you're not a member, please consider becoming a member to support our great work, including work such as this. You can go to our website at nhlakes.org. Our mission, as simply put, is to keep our lakes clean and healthy now and in the future. And we work with partners, folks like the Marine Patrol and others. We promote clean water policies and hopefully inspire people to use our lakes wisely and to care for our lakes. Our programs, if you know us, you probably know us through the Lake Host Courtesy Boat Inspection Program, those blue-suited folks out helping to check your boats to make sure you're not transporting any unwanted plants and animals. That's our Lake Host program. We also do advocacy at the state level. We advocate for our state agencies and funding for them, and also policies and rules to help better protect and keep our lakes clean, healthy, and safe. And we do outreach. And this summer, we've switched gears a little bit with outreach to online webinars, and these seem to be widely popular. And again, this is our third series. So we're really excited to have you with us this evening. Your guest presenter this evening, the expert, is Captain Tim Dunleavy with the New Hampshire State the Marine Patrol. And he's been with the agency for a number of years, and he truly is a wonderful partner to work with. And so I'm going to turn it over to Captain Dunleavy. I'm just going to find his name here and give him the ability to share his screen. So Captain Dunleavy, I have given you privileges. You should be able to share your screen. So I'm going to stop sharing mine.
Thank you.
And good evening, welcome.
And good evening to all of you. And for those who I may have caused to go into panic mode because of my late arrival, I apologize. I suspect, unfortunately, you'll hear in the news why I may have been a little bit late. We've had another tragedy in our state tonight. So I apologize, but here I am. And let me ask you, Andrea, do you need me to pull up from my end my presentation, or have you got it preloaded and I just need to share it?
Whatever is most comfortable for you. If you'd like to share it yourself, then you can click through, or I can pull it up and click through for you.
Let me see if I can pull it up for you.
Yeah.
I'll start off by first of all saying thank you to the New Hampshire Lakes for this opportunity to reach out to so many of you. It is a privilege to be able to access our boating community in this forum. And certainly New Hampshire Lakes is what we consider one of our closest strategic partners, both on the water and before the legislature in the off season, and with the various initiatives, I guess is a good way of putting it, that we all look to work together on, that make our lakes and our boating environment much more enjoyable for everyone. So with that, I'll start off by saying the Marine Patrol is a unit now within the Department of Safety. We're actually a unit within the Division of State Police. We are made up of seasonal patrol officers as well as full-time staff, with 3 legislative initiatives and three legislative responsibilities. Those vary from not only our traditional recognized mission of boating safety, enforcing boating laws and rules. We're also required by statute to make sure that our hazards on our public waters are marked through our buoy system. And we are required by law to offer an education opportunity to the boating public. And that we do through our classroom courses as well as our internet online courses, which, by the way, due to the COVID pandemic, that's the only option these days is the online version of our course. And the fact that the proctored exam requirement has been waived for that, we have seen a spike, significant spike in the activity of that course. So folks are taking advantage of it. An educated boater is obviously the best type. So we're thrilled that that's happening. Within Department of Safety, obviously you have state police, you have the fire marshal, you have Division of Administration, Emergency Management, E911, all agencies that certainly with our merging with that unit has given us assets that we would have never dreamed of having before. And so while they also see our fleet of boats as being an asset to them, their assets are great for us. And so that's sort of where we are and where we come from. With that, I'm going to start off with just talking a little bit about boating safety, and then I'll be happy to speak to any specific questions that you may have or issues or things that you would like to speak to. Happy to answer those any way I can. So I'm just going to share my screen here, hopefully. Are you seeing my screen?
Not yet.
All right, Andrea, I may need to rely on your technical assistance here. I'm clicking on share screen. How about now?
This is going, yep.
Yes.
And then now you'll just want to see if you can get it into present mode. You're all good. Good job.
Okay. So feel free, if anybody has any questions they want to shout out, you as the moderators, if you see a question that might be pertinent to a slide or topic we're on, I'm happy to take it whenever you like me to entertain any questions. Again, I've mentioned we are responsible for the enforcement of boating laws and rules. We have unique jurisdiction in that we can enforce just about anything criminal or boating related on the water. But for those things that are not immediate dangers to people or property that are happening on land, we do not have jurisdiction. So we're going to rely on the assistance of a local jurisdiction, police department, sheriff's department, or state police to do that. If something happens on the water and carries onto the land, we are able to continue to follow up with any enforcement action that might be needed. Things that we don't have jurisdiction on that might surprise people is perhaps a trespass violation on an island or on land adjacent to shore. Perhaps an alarm or a past tense burglary that's taken place on an island or shorefront property. So it's not for our lack of wanting to help people out. It's simply because we don't have the jurisdiction to do what follow-up might be necessary. Again, providing education to recreational boaters, excuse me, maintaining aids to navigation. We have about 5,000 of them statewide. And we have a mechanic force of 3 mechanics who build these navigation aids. Some we purchase. And our officers in uniform, or when they're not in uniform, as part of their day, may not be patrolling. They may be in a maintenance boat, making sure that aids to navigation are on station or are replaced if they've been struck, or batteries in a flashing light need to be changed. Our powers, police powers, are only on those bodies of water that are considered public bodies of water with a magic size of 10 acres or more. So if you are on a body of water less than 10 acres in size, it's not considered public waters, and therefore we do not have a presence or jurisdiction on them. We get into safety equipment a little bit. And the Coast Guard goes back and forth depending upon the fad of the day, where you either call them life jackets or personal flotation devices, PFDs. Either way, we all know, I think, what they are. And I'll remind folks that all vessels on New Hampshire waters being used are required to have a life jacket on board for everyone. The quantity and type of life jacket will vary depending upon the length of the boat and the number of people on board, or in some cases being towed. There are 5 types of life jackets, and I'm not going to dive into the various characteristics of each, other than to say that there are some that are certainly conducive to certain activities like skiing or paddling, where others are certainly geared strictly toward preserving life. And here's an example of the type 1, which comfort is not its goal. It's to keep people out of the water, floating on the surface with their head out of the water. And you'll see the flotation is going to be on the front of the person, which if they're unconscious, it's designed to roll them over. Same thing with the type 2, little less bulky, probably your least expensive life jacket on the market and the most popular that we see on boats around the state. But they do require some effort to put on. And we always like to use this analogy in our classroom, that the time to put on your life jacket is not when you're in the water. That's like putting on your seatbelt when your car is on black ice and already into a 360 spin. It's too late. So have the kids, if they're a little hesitant to want to wear a life jacket, have a little exercise in the shallow water at the beach, and ask them to not touch the bottom, and try to put that life jacket on and strap it up so that it's useful. I think you'll see if you put a stopwatch on it, it may open some eyes. Type 3 is probably the most popular device we have out there. Certainly ski vests are used by everybody, not only for a water sport, but also for riding in boats. It doesn't have that collar around the back of your neck. It tends to be more comfortable. Comes in a variety of sizes for all shapes and figures, including infants. The bottom right-hand corner, you see a toddler size life jacket where you have both the vest as well as the high flotation collar in the back, and the handy strap for dunking those infants in the cool water to cool them off when they get a little fussy. But the Type 3 is certainly the most comfortable out there. You'll see the Type 3 inflatable in our little picture here. Those, while a little more expensive than your Type 2 orange around the head device, these are so comfortable. Our officers are required to wear these year-round, anytime they're on board the boat. And after wearing them a couple of times, you don't even realize that they're on. Great for paddlers. They don't restrict your motion at all, and are very, very effective when they're deployed, whether they are deployed automatically or manually, like you see in your instructions on an airplane. The one thing to remember about your inflatables is that these are not recognized for children under 16 years of age. Even though they may be of size for that teenager's body, studies have shown that the cognitive development of a child in a panic situation wouldn't allow them potentially to activate these devices in those circumstances. So while it looks great way to get a youngster to wear one, consider their level of ability to activate these. And then your throwable devices. Any powerboat greater than 16 feet in length needs to have that throwable device, whether it be your traditional seat cushion or life ring, um, for being able to retrieve somebody or throw to somebody who might be struggling in the water. Special use devices, you'll see some of these. I only put this slide in here while the image is not necessarily the one we refer to. A special use device is most often found on skiers. It's usually a wetsuit with flotation. Your barefoot water skiers, your more active wake surfers and wakeboarders will wear a shorty wetsuit that has flotation built in, which meets the Coast Guard requirement of a life jacket. It gives them the flexibility they need, and it's close to the body, that is, so it's not impacting the activity that they're engaged in. Again, there needs to be one on board for everybody. 12 years of age and younger must be wearing that life jacket at all times. That is frustrating for young families, mothers who might be nursing. Hot weather, humid weather, those kids don't want to be in them. Remember that when that boat is underway, those children need to be in the jacket. Ski craft wearers of any age, users of any age, need to be wearing a life jacket. And if you are being towed behind a boat, you need to be wearing a jacket. Big thing that we're seeing on our water now with the explosion of paddlecraft, particularly stand-up paddle boards, also known as SUPs. SUPs are required to have a life jacket on board for those adults, and if there's a user 12 years of age or under, they need to be wearing them. The Coast Guard has recognized these boards as boats, and therefore that life jacket requirement sticks. The only time a stand-up paddleboard is not required to have a life jacket is when they are in the surf zones on the seacoast and being used more as a traditional surfboard rather than a stand-up paddleboard. And when you are in a surf zone, then obviously the use of an ankle leash is critical, so that you are not being separated from that board and can use its flotation properties in the event you need to. An example of paddle boards, that's the Marine Patrol mascot, Zip It, who, if you follow us on social media, have seen Zip It make some appearances this year. And I suspect you'll see him again going into this weekend, as we're going to do a significant social media push on swimming safety, considering the recent tragedies that many may be aware of, particularly in Merrimack River in the Concord area. Navigation lights. Every single boat that goes out on the water at night, every single canoe, every single kayak, every single stand-up paddleboard that goes out on our waters after sunset needs lights. The craft that I just mentioned, your paddle craft, only need a white light, visible 360 degrees around you for 2 miles. Once you add power to that boat, well, then you have your red and green that come into play. Many people who go out in paddlecraft, I'm just going to be close to shore, they don't make the connection for those lights, or the need for those lights. And remember, lights on boats are to be seen, not to be used to see where you're going. So make sure your lights are displayed at night. Power boats, remember the use of LED lights and docking lights on the exterior of your boat. If they interfere at all with the navigation lights or mimic the emergency lights of a first responder, then they are not to be displayed. And a lot of your aftermarket LED manufacturers are not telling boaters this. They're buying boats equipped with them, or they're paying big money at a boat show to have their boat equipped with the very attractive glowing lights off the stern or under a swim platform. If you're underway, you're not supposed to be displaying those. And this time of year is a great reminder for those of you who are sailors. A lot of people who have no auxiliary power or any charging system on your sailboats, you charge your batteries before they go in the water Memorial Day weekend, and you forget about them. And you find yourself out at night. Maybe you've been sailing at night numerous times. Those marine batteries, while they hold the charge very well, don't last all summer. And what's happening, and you may or may not be aware of it, is the visibility requirement of those colored lights being a mile and the white light of 2 miles. They're becoming dimmer and dimmer as those batteries begin to lose their charge as the summer goes on. So make sure, we always say, kind of like your fire detectors at home, you charge them at the beginning of the year, and on the 4th of July, you charge them again to get you through the rest of the summer. Those dim lights on sailboats can be very dangerous. Lights need to be displayed after sunset and before sunrise. Sound producing devices, your horns and whistles, all power boats are required to have these, as well as fire extinguishers. And here's a quick chart just showing you, depending upon the length of your boat and whether or not your boat has an automatic system in the engine compartment, how many portable life jackets you need in addition to those fixed systems. Quick reminder, a fixed system works by discharging a chemical in your engine compartment when it senses a certain temperature. That chemical that is released into the environment reacts with the oxygen in the environment, which without oxygen, you can't have a fire. So the worst thing you can do when you get notification at the dashboard that your fixed system has discharged is to go back and pull the engine cover back to see what's happening. You're then reintroducing that oxygen to that environment and could possibly experience a significant flare-up, which then you get the fire on your hands. Let those systems do their thing, keep those compartments closed, and know that they are removing the oxygen from the environment. If you're in a boat that's got a canvas up or an enclosed compartment, you're feeling lightheaded, it may be because your passenger compartment of your boat is also experiencing a lack of oxygen due to this chemical discharge designed to keep the boat from burning. I'm moving very fast, so if I need to slow down, please shout at me. Spar buoys. New Hampshire deploys about 5,000 variations of our spar buoys. We are one of the few states in the country that mark all of our hazards, particularly those that exist in the middle of our lakes. Being glacial lakes and here in the Northeast, they don't call us the Granite State for nothing. We have wide expanses of water where suddenly we have ledge, rocks, boulders that are either just under the surface or above the surface. New Hampshire marks those. And to do so, we had to come up with or use what is known as the Cardinal system of navigation. We can't subscribe to the uniform inland waterway system, which most states do, because it doesn't account for the hazards that we experience in the middle of perfectly navigable waters. So this red and black topped system has been around a long, long time. And so without a compass, you will not know how to use these markers. You'll see described here, depending upon what your direction of travel is on the compass, these markers are going to tell you what the safe side to pass them on is. And we have all red and all black markers. Again, if you're from out of state or an ocean boater, red right return is a phrase that most people like to use. Couldn't be furthest from the truth on the inland waters. You simply need to pass between these regardless of what side the color red is on. Be between the black and the red and you will be in the safe channel. Headway speed, 6 miles per hour or the slowest speed a boat can be operated and maintain safe steerage. So if you are in a no-wake zone, 6 miles an hour for some boats isn't the slowest speed that you could be going. Your straight inboard ski boats are examples where perhaps you need to go into neutral once in a while in order to keep your boat slow enough to meet this law. I've had many people come, well, I got a ski boat, it's a straight inboard, I can't go any slower. I drove one for 15 years on patrol and you just need to use neutral and you can go that slow. Water skiing, while this definition does not include wake surfers, it does include wakeboarding, tubing, and traditional water skiing. And that skier, when being towed behind a boat, is an extension of that boat when we start talking about our safe passage law, which we'll talk about in a minute. You're not allowed to tow more than 2 people on skis in New Hampshire. And when you are towing 2 people on skis, 1 or 2 people on skis, you are required to have an observer on board the boat with you, in addition to the operator. That has to be at least 13 years of age and able to physically assist an injured skier. Some of you, if you have slalom courses on the lake that you reside on, may see that there are, while a boat is using a slalom course, there is no observer in the boat. New Hampshire law allows for the use of a boat operator to use a mirror, a rear view mirror, instead of an observer while towing a skier through a slalom course and while engaged in slalom skiing course use only. So if they're skiing beyond the use of that course, the approach or the exit of that course, then they are required to have the observer. In the case of life jackets, anybody being towed needs one. When towing tubes, you are required to have, and you can tow multiple tubes. The most amount of people you can have on the outside of the boat is 6. If you are towing more than 2 people, however, whether it be on one device or multiple devices, you then need 2 observers. If you are towing just 2 people, then only 1 observer is required. I'll add, when we're talking about tubing, and I know that there are YouTube videos of people that enjoy posting the tumbles, the tosses, the airborne tubes and bodies of family members enjoying this experience. I will tell you that the #1 personal injury accident that Marine Patrol investigates every year are injuries to tubers. 9 times out of 10, they're concussions or facial injuries or head injuries where they've made contact with the person they're riding with. They lose teeth, they break orbital bones. Very, very dangerous. And where I'm going with this is, every device, when you buy them, the materials that support that device will tell you the maximum speed those devices should be towed at. And I will tell you that they are every day towed at a much faster speed than what's recommended by the manufacturer. And that is the result, or results in these injuries. They're striking wakes, they're getting air, they're hitting lake chop while being towed, or they're in a whip situation when the boat goes into a turn, which I know is providing the thrill. But they are exceeding the capabilities of that tube and resulting in injuries. Something for boat operators to consider. Safe passage law, the #1 violated law on New Hampshire waters, which requires boats to be at no wake or headway speed when they are 150 feet from this list of items. Shoreline, docks, and other boats are probably the most violated items on this list. And in our courses, if you've taken our courses in person, our instructors will take you out and show you what 150 feet looks like. We have pre-measured lines in our courses and range finders. 150 feet is half a football field. 150 feet is 2 ski lines tied together. 150 feet for you who are operating a 25-foot ski boat is 6 boat lengths. And when you can picture that image, as you get used to the length of your boat, when you pull into a town dock or your own dock, you know how much space you need. It becomes instinctive. Multiply that distance times 6 and put that between you and all other items on the water when you're going faster than headway speed. Wake surfing is now the rage across the country. And here I've posted a poster of Wake Responsibly. This is there are brochures. This happens to be a poster that is put out by the Water Sports Industry of America, reminding people who are wake surfers, especially those who are using what we've come to know as wake boats or ballast boats, those boats that are producing large wakes for this surfing activity, to remain at least 200 feet away, keep music at reasonable levels, and to minimize repetitive passes in front of the same properties as you are engaged in this activity. Many of you on tonight's call or virtual presentation here are probably concerned with this. This is a hot topic in our state, but it's nationwide as well. I talk to our counterparts on a regular basis, and this is certainly something that is becoming or seeing attention from not only the users. It's very, very popular. Wake boats, they can't keep them in the showrooms, the dealers. Families are doing this before they water ski now. But there are certainly concerns that are being raised by shorefront property owners as well. So with that, I bring your attention what is being talked about with wake surfing. Boating education. Anybody who operates a boat over 25 horsepower in our state needs to have passed a boating education course, whether it be one of the New Hampshire courses or a course that we recognize from around the country. You'll see on the bottom right-hand corner the insignia for NASBLA. That is the body that approves courses that meet reciprocity requirements across the country. This is supported by the Coast Guard. And in addition to state courses that are NASBLA approved, we also recognize Coast Guard auxiliary courses and U.S. Power Squadron courses. So that's our boating ed plug for tonight. And then we play a role certainly on the water with aquatic invasives. Obviously, here's New Hampshire Lakes decal and their work about clean, drain, and dry. Marine Patrol officers are checking boats, making sure that they're discharging where they should at boat ramps when we're at a ramp. We, by the way, subject our officers annually to the same training that the Lake Host program folks go through for checking boats. Our officers are required to check their boats, trailers, axles, all of those things between every body of water. But we typically spend the time to look at our boats when we're leaving a body of water. In the event we get that emergency call, and when we go to launch, to take the time then is not the good time for us response-wise. Plus, we want to remove those items before we leave a certain body of water and continue down the road. So those are the efforts that we go through. Amy Smagula typically comes in and teaches our officers, our new officers, every year. And then we have an in-service training where any new infestations are covered and our officers become aware of those in their patrol areas. Accident investigation certainly is a major role that we play. And not only our safety message, but we are required to report accident statistics like officers on the road to the feds so that trends can be identified and hopefully improvements can be made to craft. Accidents of all kinds, certainly some tragic, some aren't. But what we find, particularly those that result in personal injury and fatality, about 83% or so involve alcohol. And that statistic not only proves true nationally, but also in New Hampshire. And aside from that original boat fire photo that I showed you, these photos are all accidents that resulted in the operators being arrested as a result of being impaired operators. This is just a quick story on this slide here. It was early in the boating season when we received a call from the captain of the Mount Washington on Lake Winnipesaukee, who was returning to Weirs Bay on the outside of Governor's Island. Eagle Island is a little island that sits in the middle of that channel. He stated that he saw the lights of a boat come from the Weirs Beach area, the beach proper, disappear behind Eagle Island and never come out the other side. We responded. They used their lights. The fire department responded, looked all over and could not find a boat. It wasn't until the next morning that our first officers out on patrol, we notified them of the call, and here's what they found. It was some young teenagers from Connecticut that had come up. Each one of them told their parents that they were staying at the other one's house overnight, and made the trip to New Hampshire to the summer resident and went off for a joyride and parked their boat on Eagle Island. And this is on Whortleberry Island on Lake Winnipesaukee. Interestingly, we had a call from an elderly woman who was on an island and said, "I've got a stranger sleeping in my gazebo." And we sent an officer right over, and sure enough, just out of this picture to the left is a gazebo, and this gentleman parked his boat high and dry. And when he realized he wasn't going to move for the day, decided he'd sleep it off in the neighboring gazebo. Interestingly, if you look real carefully in the shadows of the boat, and I've got another photo of it close up, the throttle is in the full reverse position. So he did his best to back it off the island. It just didn't work in this case. So that's my quick down and dirty presentation. And I guess at this point, I'm happy to entertain any questions.
Well, excellent. Thank you, Captain Dunleavy. Yeah, Crystal and Jessica have been manning the chat box. And I know some excellent questions have come in. Thank you, everyone who submitted questions. And if you have a question, feel free to submit it now. And I'm going to turn this over to Crystal.
Okay. Hi, Captain Dunleavy. Thanks for joining us this evening. That was
Thank you.
Very informational. I did take the online course several years ago, and it's really useful for me to get this refresher as a kayaker that goes out on our lakes. We had a handful of questions come in. I didn't want to interrupt you, even though you invited me to, so I reserved them all for the end.
Okay.
So back at the beginning, when you were talking about personal flotation devices / life jackets, we got a couple questions coming in about more on paddle crafts. You spoke to paddle boards specifically, but canoes and kayaks, what are their PFD requirements? And for people in inner tubes, do they have PFD requirements?
Great question. So any paddle craft, canoes or kayaks, you are required to have them as an adult. 12 and under must be wearing them while you're out paddling. For inner tubes, that is a tricky question in that it all really depends on how they're being used. One of the things that we are recently concerned with are the amount of people who are using inner tubes. They're launching at the county facility on the Merrimack River in Boscawen, and they're floating down the river 10 miles and getting out at the Hannah Dustin rest area. Coast Guard says any device being used for transportation on the water meets the definition of a boat. So an inner tube, while it might be a water toy when it's off the beach, when you're transiting the river 10 miles, certainly I think there's justification there for calling it a boat, and that a life jacket would be an appropriate device to have on board. I would remind folks that our officers typically use proper discretion in how they address those circumstances when they find somebody with no life jacket on an inner tube, but remind them of the tragedies that can result. Certainly.
And of course, if an inner tube is being trailered behind a boat, they would definitely need to wear one then.
Absolutely. That anything being towed behind a boat, if it's attached to the boat by a line, meets the definition of a water ski.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Interesting. Thank you. While we're still on the topic of paddlecraft, are there navigational light requirements for paddlecraft in the same way that there are light requirements for motorized boats?
Yes, there are. Paddlecraft are required to have one white light that is visible on the horizon 360 degrees for 2 miles. Those white lights are readily available as clamp-on. They're battery operated. You can get them at all your major retailers. Marinas have them. And what's important to remember about those types of lights is, depending upon how you display them from the paddlecraft, the canoe or the kayak, remember your body is probably covering up 180 of those degrees if you're just clamping it to the front bow, if you will, of the kayak. or maybe at the transom of a canoe. So consider how high that light is being displayed. Make sure that it's displayed above your head so that boats in all directions can see you as they approach you.
Okay, I'll get right on that, sir.
For your safety.
I had no idea, and I'm happy to learn that. We always brought our headlamps, so shame on me. I'm so embarrassed.
Many people follow the same thought pattern that you have. They bring a flashlight or something, and many a time I've been on patrol at night, and I'll be going down the lake, and all of a sudden I have this flashlight beam in my face, flickering at me, and it's paddlecraft who have waited for the approaching powerboat to then immediately take away the powerboater's night vision by shining a flashlight in their face. So yeah, it is required to be displayed at all times, and certainly not directly in the face of the powerboat.
Makes sense. While we're on the topic of navigational lights and nighttime visibility, we had a question about anchor lights at night. An individual shared their experience of being on Lake Winnipesaukee at night and coming upon an anchored boat, practically, but they were on top of it by the time they were actually able to see the light. And so anchored boats at night in the middle of the lake, what are the light requirements for those boats?
Precisely what you mentioned, an anchor light. An anchor light is the same as your paddlecraft. It's one white light, visible for 2 miles, 360 degrees on the horizon. And without getting into a deep lesson on what boats have right of way on the over another, or what the colored lights, the red and green, mean, they all have meaning at night. And when a power boater, who usually has to give the right of way to paddlecraft, as well as sailboats, as well as boats at anchor, the only thing they should ever see on any of those boats is one white light. That's telling them that they have the responsibility to give that craft the right of way. When they start seeing colored lights in combination with those white lights, then they know it's another power boat, and then they're going to be looking at the colored light, red or green, as to whether or not they have the right of way. The right of way, they're going to see green, while the other boat should be seeing red from your boat. So those colors mean something, similar to the street lights on our roads. So a boat at anchor, which obviously all other boats would need to avoid, needs to show that one white light.
I have a personal question. So you talked about the distance of the visibility of the white light for paddlecraft. I assume that applies to anchor lights as well. So as boaters, it sounds like we have some responsibility to ensure that the brightness of the lights we're using are maintained.
Very good point. Yes, that is the case. It doesn't matter what size boat you're on, whether it's power, sail, or a paddlecraft, all the white lights in New Hampshire on the water need to be seen for at least 2 miles. The red and green of a power boat or certain sailboats need to be seen for at least 1 mile. Certainly with the evolution of lighting technology and LED lights, battery life is tremendously longer. The lights are brighter than ever on the same 2 D-cell batteries that we've been using for incandescent bulbs forever. So it's easy to achieve that distance with today's technology, and the batteries last so much longer.
Thank you. Okay, cruising along here. There was a question about being in no wake zones and what kind of distance boats need to be keeping from, other boats and shoreline and things like that when they are in a no wake zone. Is it as big as when they're operating at a higher speed, or is it much reduced?
When you're in a no-wake zone, or when a boat is outside of a no-wake zone but traveling no-wake speed, they can be as close to shore, they can be as close to a swim line or a raft or another dock, as long as they are doing so safely in terms of people in the water, or in terms of providing access of the shorefront property owner to and from their property by boat at their dock. So if I am in an area traveling no wake speed, or maybe at idle speed, or just drifting, I cannot become a hazard to navigation. I cannot endanger a swimmer, and I can't block access to your dock if you are trying to reach it or leave your property by boat. Outside of that, it is public waters, and as long as I'm in the public waters, I have every right to be there as anyone else, and to engage in any activity, whether it be fishing for that lunker bass under the end of the dock, or dropping my anchor and breaking out the lawn chair and sitting on a sandbar in front of your property. That is certainly an excellent example of some of the conflicts and competing uses of our waters that Marine Patrol deals with every day, particularly this summer.
Thank you for reading between the lines there. I think that you did a very comprehensive job of addressing what that question was really asking. We got another question, and I admit to not being familiar with this particular question, but one of the attendees asked why the state of New Hampshire allows marinas to offer temporary boater safety courses.
So the history of that comes from the various attempts of mandatory education that the state tried to legislate back in the 90s and finally in 2001 when they passed the mandatory education law. We were, I believe, the 7th or 9th state in the country to require mandatory education. For a seasonal tourist state, we have always been very advanced with our boating laws compared to others in the country. And there was a concern by of the legislature, particularly for our marine dealers and our liveries around the state, where so few states were requiring mandatory education that they felt that they would lose business for that impulse boat renter who would show up from out of state, who didn't have boating education, but wanted to rent that boat. Significant source of income for our marinas around the state.
Mm-hmm.
So the compromise with the mandatory boating education law at that time was what they called a 14-day temporary certificate, where a person could go to a marina. They would have to log on to a computer to a web-based tutorial where they would have the ability to study our boating laws in advance, and then sit down and take a 25-question test. And if they scored 80 or better, then they would get a 14-day temporary certificate. Hence, the ability for the marina to then rent the boat to the person, making them legal to do so. And that was the compromise and by the way, they were only eligible to do that one time per year. So the thought was that they would leave our state, recognizing if they were going to return, they would then need to take the time to take a full-blown course and get that lifetime certificate.
Okay, interesting. Thank you for informing all of us on that. We had a question coming in concerning milfoil stickers. Obviously, in New Hampshire, we have a handful of lakes that straddle the Maine and New Hampshire state lines. In Maine, everybody's required to purchase a milfoil sticker, and so folks were wondering if they're on one of those water bodies, if they need to have a Maine sticker and a New Hampshire sticker. And Andrea addressed this in the chat box that there's currently no milfoil sticker requirement for New Hampshire, but coming up in 2021, there will be an out-of-state milfoil sticker or a milfoil sticker for out-of-state boaters. And I guess we should call it an aquatic invasive species decal. Do you want to give a quick plug to the AIS decal coming up?
Sure, it is coming. It's on the books now. We have worked with Amy, interestingly, with some of our same vendors that we use for boating education for online stores and how we make certain things available to the boating public. Excuse me. And so once they are able to roll out that program and those decals for out-of-state boaters hit the waters, it is a secondary offense. So we're not going to be able to stop boaters just for decal AIS stickers. But if we stop them for another reason, we then can address whether or not they have that decal. And certainly the fact that these will be available by smartphone will allow the person to instantaneously get that decal, or at least pay for it show a receipt. Bottom line is those revenues are then coming in to fight, the good fight that certainly New Hampshire Lakes and others are trying to engage in with the control of these aquatic invasives. So, excuse me, right now with the state of Maine, interestingly, they require, they have they're known as their milfoil decal, I guess. We have mandatory boating education where the state of Maine does not. So for those bodies of water that we share with Maine, Great East Lake being an example, Milton Three Ponds, we sort of have a gentleman's agreement with the Maine Warden Service where we will educate a Maine boater on the New Hampshire side of the lake that they need education, an education requirement. And Maine is educating New Hampshire boaters that they need a decal while in Maine. That agreement is that we won't be issuing tickets to each other for those offenses. Now New Hampshire has that requirement for out-of-state boats, and certainly resident boaters are contributing through their current registration fee structure. So we're going to have to revisit that issue with Maine when our decal program hits the water.
All right. So everybody should be expecting that coming up in 2021. So when you invite your family members and they bring their boats with them, you're going to want to purchase that decal. Andrea and Jessica, were there any questions that came in through the chat box that I may have missed, or for folks that may have a burning question that haven't submitted it yet, now is a great time to send those in through the chat box.
Sure, Crystal, I have a quick one that might just take 1 second. Is there a need for a secondary horn or whistle if your boat is already equipped with one?
No, there is not. What I will share with you is, and I always use the phrase, we can put a man on the moon, but we can't get a boat gas gauge to work, nor can we keep a boat's factory horn to work every time. Certainly the referee's whistle that you can buy for $1.89 at any box store can be heard a mile away. It's the safest, easiest to store. Clip it to a life jacket or a keychain, and you're covered.
Captain Dunleavy, we had a question come in, and during my career in lake management in New Hampshire, I remember several years ago, some lakes had sort of a volunteer marine auxiliary type program. And so one of the Lake Association presidents put in a comment into the chat box that, you know, they've seen so much activity and, you know, somewhat unsafe behavior on their lake this summer that their association would be interested and willing to come up, you know, participate in some sort of safety boat program where the association could help educate boaters on the lake about safety issues. And I know you have some experience with this over the years and wanted to give you the opportunity to share your thoughts.
Sure. First off, anybody that is interested in spreading the boating safety and the word of boating safety, we would be happy to engage them and talk about ways where we could work with them in their areas to help spread that message. Specifically to the Marine Patrol Auxiliary, we had a very active auxiliary back in the 90s into the 2000s. And over time, quite frankly, the membership became smaller and smaller. Volunteerism in our country, you know, is known to be less and less. You look at the numbers of the Coast Guard Auxiliary, our service organizations, whether it be the Rotary or the Lions Club, so on, are all struggling for membership. And there are, to be effective there, with the Marine Patrol Auxiliary, we had to have training requirements. And people didn't want to come to training. You could never get everybody there at the same time. And frankly, what we found was that there were very local, very specific motivations for people to join the auxiliary that wasn't necessarily resulting in the good-natured, good-willed attempt at spreading the boating safety message. And it became sometimes the crusade of a small group or an individual to address what they were watching from their dock on weekends. So that in combination with the amount of time and money that the state was investing in supervision, uniforming these people, trying to get trainings together, it just didn't become, it was no longer a viable option for us. and the decision was made by the administrators at the Department of Safety to dissolve the program. That being said, again, if a group has some concerns about a body of water and they want to do their part, we would be happy to have you work with our boating ed folks, do a boating safety day, sponsor a courtesy boat inspection at a town dock. Happy to bring our mascot along, zip it along, along with brochures, advertise, do press releases, social media releases, and do those things that hopefully will accomplish what these folks really are striving to do.
Great, great. Yeah, as someone who manages volunteer programs, I can certainly relate to some of the challenges, but also the enthusiasm. And that's great to know that associations can reach out to the boating ed folks to work on specific outreach. Another just general question. So say you're, say my family were out on the boat and we see something unsafe. I'm not sure what, but so if someone's out there and they see an unsafe situation, what should they do if anything?
Certainly, that is an appropriate use of the emergency 911 phone call. A lot of people look at 911 and they say, oh, that's got to be an emergency, life or death. The appropriate use of 911 is to report an emergency, certainly, but also to report any violation or any suspected violation that may be happening. I will tell you that 911 operator has a dedicated phone line right to state police dispatch. And depending upon where you're calling from in the state, that dispatcher from that troop, whether it be Troop E in Tamworth or Troop C in Keene, they will then have direct communication to our officers in those patrol areas and get that call out to them right away. So 911.
Okay, great. That makes sense.
And I had a qualifier to that question. Would that also apply to general violations? If somebody is violating the 150-foot rule, should they contact Marine Patrol directly to report that kind of activity on their lake, or in that instance, could they also call them?
Yes, absolutely. Any violation that you observe, certainly the dispatcher is going to ask you for a description of the boat. The more information you have to offer us, the better. That call to our headquarters on Monday morning of this crazy behavior of the neighbor's grandson on a jet ski on Sunday afternoon isn't going to help us at all. We need to get that call when we're the person who's observing this illegal behavior. Boat colors, life jacket color, man or a woman in a white T-shirt at the helm, and right down to the bow number, registration number is the best of all. Direction of travel. Now I know sometimes these observations are made from the end of a dock, and by the time you get up to camp and make the call, you don't know what direction they were traveling in. That's fine. But whatever information you can give us, the better.
Great. We had another question come in about docks and buoys that folks might put out on the water. Does Marine Patrol enforce whether or not those are put out legally or illegally?
Yes, we do. We have finding, particularly this year, we've seen a significant increase in boating activity on our waters. And we're finding the use of inflatable trampolines and aquatic toys, as well as the old plywood rafts, bleach bottles. We're finding these things are going further and further out from shore. And quite honestly, it becomes obvious to us over time that this is simply an attempt of a shorefront property owner to push that routine boating traffic further and further away from their frontage. Those are illegal uses of those types of devices. Those types of devices need to be as close to shore as possible with the least amount of impact on the boating public. If somebody's putting out a milk bottle on a rock that's off the end of their dock to show the channel, safe channel into their dock, happens everywhere. We have no problem with that. It sometimes is an assistant officer trying to get to someone's dock. So that's certainly not the circumstance we're concerned with. It's those uses of those types of things that have an alternative motivation.
Okay. We actually have a nice story that came in through the chat box here from an individual from Lake Winnipesaukee who reported a safety issue to Marine Patrol with somebody violating the 150-foot rule. They called it a near miss, so I assume two boats coming into close vicinity to one another. Says that they said that a photo of the boat close to their boat helped to substantiate the report, and that the offending boater was contacted by Marine Patrol, and they wish to thank Officer Jones for addressing the situation.
I will pass that on. He's on patrol this evening as we speak, and I'm sure I will catch him at shift change later on.
Excellent. Well, I think we've answered most of the questions in the chat box, and I know it's after 8 and folks want to enjoy this beautiful summer evening. So I want to thank everyone for tuning in, and you will get an evaluation email in just a few minutes. Let us know how we did and things you want to learn in the future. Tomorrow morning, you'll get an email with links to the slides and the presentation. But I wanted to just say, Captain Dunleavy, thank you so very much for making time to meet with us tonight. I know this is a very busy time for you and your whole team, and for all that you and your team are doing out there. It's been a busier than ever summer from my perspective out on the lake. So thank you. And I just wanted to turn it over to you in case there was any last things you wanted to share with our audience this evening.
I'll be brief in saying that, first of all, thank you very much to New Hampshire Lakes and all of you folks who have joined us tonight. I want to remind folks that we here at Marine Patrol are recognizing this is one of the busiest summers that our lakes have experienced in my memory, at least. I'll throw a plug in that if you have anybody in your family or extended family or friends who might want to become a Marine Patrol officer, we are recruiting and testing. I will share that as busy as it is, my seasonal staff numbers are as low as they have ever been. And that is not budget related. Please understand that with the help of New Hampshire Lakes and the Marine Trades, we are a dedicated, our funds are dedicated to our agency. We are just struggling to get people to apply for our positions. So if you know of someone, we're recruiting, we're trying to boost those numbers. As a result of those low numbers too, I also recognize that by prioritizing our most important calls, many of your frustrations are going unanswered. We're doing the best that we can with the numbers that we have and prioritizing our calls as we feel are most important. So please hang in there and understand we're not happy with our numbers where they are, and we're doing our best to recruit for next season. So with that, any of you ever have any questions, feel free to call Marine Patrol headquarters. Feel free to call me personally if you have an issue you'd like to discuss. I'm happy to return your call or take your call anytime.
Great. Well, thank you again for your time, and thank you everyone for joining us. And please share what you learned today with your friends, your families, your neighbors, and other boaters that you know in your lives. So thank you again, and I hope to see you all next week to learn a little bit more about lake ecology. So take care.
Thank you all very much.